Hi, Yehudah Glick.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, you're chairman of the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation.
That's right.
Although I think most people know you better as somebody who goes up on the Temple Mount quite frequently.
That's the same thing. It's the same thing because the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation is really about turning the Temple Mount into a center of glory, of inspiration for everybody.
We recently had an article, an interview that you did with Joel Rosenberg on our website. I want to ask you a little bit about these issues because, I mean, I understand that it is you believe it's your right, biblically, maybe even politically, to pray right on the Temple Mount. Okay. Question is, knowing that is probably going to incite the world, and all the violence that we've seen recently, like what is the line between this is my right and this is what I believe, what God gave me, versus maybe we're going to have World War III?
Did you ever hear of a newspaper in France called the Charlie Hebdo? Okay, there was a terror attack there. I think according to the knowledge, the logic that you just mentioned, they probably closed down the Charlie Hebdo because it's inciting terror. No, they didn't. They continued publishing the paper. Not only that, ever since the terror attack, it's grown, and they publish more. You don't stop doing things because other people decide to use terror against you. Prayer doesn't kill, terror kills, and it's not only fighting for my right. It's not a fighting for my right. Mm-hmm. The place is supposed to be a center of prayer. It's not supposed to be a center of violence. According to the logic that you, in your question, represented, which is logical, which many people were in the media expressed, it says, okay, guys, let's give it into the bullies. Teachers in a school, when there's a bully beating up the kids, they don't walk out with the whole class and let the bully stay there. They say, no, let's take the bully out of here. We are for the place to be. We want to change the music on Temple Mount. We want to let's make Temple Mount holy again. And making the place holy is by adding prayer there and adding joy there, and not by running away from terror and giving the terror an opportunity. I spoke about Charlie Hebdo, but I can speak about the Western Wall tunnels. When they opened them in 1996, there were riots. 51 Palestinians were killed, 17 Israelis were killed. So they said, let's close it. And I said, no, we're opening it. Mm-hmm. And now we have 1 million visitors who visit there every single year. The same thing as Temple Mount. We can't give in to terror because when you give in to terror, terror has an appetite to do more terror. Mm-hmm. What we have to do, the best way to overcome darkness is by adding light. And we invite people, come up to the Temple Mount, do it in a friendly attitude, and we're friendly with all the people going there. They could be Chinese, they could be Muslims, they could be Christians. We say anybody who wants to respect others and pray are welcome to do so, because the closeness to a person, to God, is measured by how much he can be inclusive to others. Mm-hmm. If you feel that God wants you to worship him only exactly your way, you got a problem with your relationship to God. Mm-hmm. God created us all differently. And he wants the Temple Mount to be a house of prayer for all nations. You don't want all nations to be the same nation. Every nation has its uniqueness. Every people has its uniqueness. And the only way that we can do it is if we turn the place holy again, meaning inclusively. Now, not only does that not incite terror, the facts are, the more people that come there, the more quiet it is. The more people run away from there, the more violent it is. And that's the secret. The secret is, let's make the place holy again. Let's change the music on Temple Mount. And that's exactly the campaign we're running right now. It's called Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. We're running a campaign called Changing the Music on Temple Mount, changing to a place, we want to make the place holy again.
How do you envision that? Like, there's a mosque already. Do you envision that there should be a church and a synagogue also? Or do you think that people should just be able to, like currently, can people walk around and pray? Wow. Like, what's your vision for making it a house of prayer for all nations?
Why only a temple and a synagogue? There should be
there's more.
A Catholic church, a Methodist church, a Protestant church, an Evangelical church.
There's no room.
You can't make everything. The whole idea.
A Buddhist temple, right.
The whole idea is that it's one place that unites us all. And we could all worship God, each one in our way. Mm-hmm. And we just had now, the same time, it was Easter, Ramadan, Passover, the Druze, the holiday of Nabi is Shuaib. Imagine that at the same time, all people would be praying, each with their own music, each with their own prayer, and all uniting to one God. It could have been something that captured the world. The whole world would come and see it. The fact that many people have different religions worshiping the same God shouldn't be a source of friction. It should be a source of beauty. When you go to see a concert, you don't want to see only a violin. You want to see a piano, and you want to see a violin, and you want to see a trumpet, and you want to see the cello and the harp, and you want to see them all. Mm-hmm. And each one of them has a uniqueness. Mm-hmm. And when you have the master, the conductor, what's beautiful at the conductor, you don't see his face. Mm-hmm. What is that? He's not playing any instruments. He's allowing each instrument to find its place. And the harmony is the beauty of the whole thing. So what we're doing in this campaign, Change the Music in Temple Mount, we're actually calling the world, join us in making that change. Mm-hmm. Join us in really promoting and making this place holy again. The only way we can do it is if more people join us, if more people come to the Temple Mount peacefully. And at the same time, we're calling upon our responsibility. Our responsibility means the State of Israel, religious leaders, political leaders, to say no more violence on Temple Mount. Violence out of here. Mm-hmm. And we should all make sure there's no violence should not be here. And we have to agree on that. Putting violence in a holy place is a contradiction. Mm-hmm. Place should be a place of holiness.
No, of course. I mean, again, you're going to say like, oh, this is the media line, but the Palestinians are accusing Israel of starting the violence on the Temple Mount, and have complained to the U.S. State Department that Israel causes the violence, and that's always that is the, that's the mantra repeated every year when there is this skirmish around Ramadan, that Israel started the violence. So, go ahead.
Let me take you 17 years back. There were 500 Jews living in the Gaza Strip, and many missiles were falling on them. And the Palestinians were saying, listen, the reason there are missiles, because there are 5,000 Jews amongst 1.5 million Arabs. Mm-hmm. Take out the Jewish settlements, and you'll see there won't be any missiles. And you know what? Ever since we uprooted the settlements in Gaza, not a single missile fell on the settlements in Gaza. Mm-hmm. They went to Ashdod, to Ashkelon, Tel Aviv. So the next step is let's remove Ashkelon, and then we'll move Ashdod, and then we'll move Tel Aviv, and then it doesn't work that way. Nobody ever wakes up in the morning and said, I'm a violent person. The violent will always blame the one attacked, and that's not the situation. If you're violent, you learn to stop being violent. The one who's to be blamed about violence is the violent person and the one who's inciting him. And any way you look to blame, the rapist will blame the victim. The bully in the class will say, no, he aggravated me. It's impossible. First, we have to agree that violence is out of the equation. We don't agree about things. Okay, let's talk. We can solve things by talking. But once you start using violence, don't go and justify violence and say, no, they're to blame. You can't do that. You can't do that. Violence, the violence should always be on the person violent and those inciting it. Because if you go by the narrative that the people who were beaten up are the ones to be blamed, then you're part of justifying and legitimizing violence. And we have to stop that. We have to say no. First, stop the violence, then we'll talk.
You have a vision of peace and of music on the Temple Mount, and it's nothing to argue with. But how do you bring the Muslims, specifically the Palestinians and maybe the Waqf, to the same? Do you have a plan to bring them to your understanding of what you think that the future of the Temple Mount could look like?
Yeah, I tell them, look at the friendship between Israel and Bahrain, and Israel and the Emirates, and Israel and Dubai, and look what's happening. There's 77 flights now every week from Dubai to Israel. So, look. But
they would say that they never had a land war, and it's a different and disconnected argument.
We can always try to explain. The question: what are the facts? The facts are right now. There's peaceful friendship being developed here, and there are two possibilities: either to stand on the side and complaining and blaming them, or to jump on the ship and be part of it. And that's what's happening. unfortunately, I said not cynically, unfortunately, the Palestinians have turned down every single offer since 1948. They were blaming Israel in 1947, blaming Israel in 1967, and blaming Israel in 1973, and blaming Israel in 1989, and blaming Israel in 2000. And you know what happened? 70 years? They're busy blaming. And you know where Israel is in the past 70 years? Developing, flourishing, GDP higher than almost everybody in the world. The question is, we see children, there are some kinds of kids. We saw Nick Vujicic here. Mm-hmm. He could blame the whole world. He could sit down and blame God for creating him that way. And you know where he would be today? Blaming. You know what? He went and learned accounting. He went and started preaching. He went and overcame. He had a million reasons in the world to blame. Blaming doesn't bring you anywhere. When we had the decision in 1947, we weren't satisfied either. But we said, okay, they're giving us this part of land, we'll live with that. Mm-hmm. They said no, the Arabs said no. 1967, we said, well, we just want to survive. The Arabs said no. And it's again and again and again and again. And look where the Arab population, look, I spoke to you about 17 years ago, the deportation from Gaza. Do you know that Israel's export of farming, of agriculture, 25% of it was from the Jewish settlements in Gaza. And you know that Israel didn't take part the greenhouses. They left them there. Do you know that Israel raised $10 billion for the Palestinians in Gaza? All they had to do was to turn on the water. They could have been prosperation for the entire Gazian civilians. You know what they did? They took those $10 billion and they decided to invest them in a different field. A field of terror tunnels, a field of PR against Israel. It doesn't get you anywhere. And unfortunately, that's where the Palestinians are right now. And those who jumped on the ship, those who participated, Dubai, Bahrain, they're flourishing. Mm-hmm. And that's the answer. You can waste your time. By the way, when I guide groups on Temple Mount, I say the same thing. I said, listen, we have 45 minutes on the Temple Mount. We can spend them, I can give you an hour speech of why the police is to blame, the Arabs is to blame, the women are to blame, and then we can go after 45 minutes, and you know what we did? We blamed. Mm-hmm. Instead, I say, well, 45 minutes, we're going to spend our time in prayer and joy for God. And then after 45 minutes, they benefited from the visit to the Temple Mount. And that's what I say, come with me to the Temple Mount, and you'll see. We're just here to add light. We're not fighting the darkness, and we're not blaming anybody. We're just going up there. And that's what we're doing. And believe me, we can make a major change in this world. And I say, you know what? We could have spent our time blaming the Germans. We have what to blame the Germans. We could have spent our time blaming the Christian world for what they did to us throughout history. Mm-hmm. Instead of that, we said, no, we're looking at the future. We want to build a future, and let's cooperate to building that future. And anybody who's cooperating with Israel is being blessed. And that's the way it is. And we say to everybody, don't look at who's to blame. Let's hold hands together and blow it. Mm-hmm. And we're going to change the music by just adding music, adding prayer, adding light, adding life. I believe that's the way to bring this thing out. And we're going to make Temple Mount holy again. And that's exactly what Shalom Jerusalem does. Shalom Jerusalem says, we're talking Shalom, we're talking Jerusalem, and we're talking it to unite us all around Jerusalem. I want all the nations to face Jerusalem and to look at Jerusalem as a source of inspiration.
Well, we pray for the peace of Jerusalem is the whole purpose also of this conference, and may it be so.
Amen.